Hello there, and a very warm welcome to Chazingdra Chats, the show where we take a stroll through the life stories of people in the Pokemon community, discovering the 6 Pokemon on their dream team along the way. And thank you for the sort of aeroplane demonstration there, Jake, as well. My name is Charlie Merriman, Merry by name, Merry by nature, otherwise known as Chazingdra, a host and commentator for the Pokemon Video Game Championship Series, and a content creator. And my guest this week, I have the honor of being joined by the content cowboy himself.
Yes.
Jake Sprague.
Hey.
Spragels. Jake, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me here. The honor is entirely mine. I am the content cowboy, and yeehaw to you and yours. I love you've got a catchphrase as well. Hit me with that again. What was it?
So, my name's Charlie Merriman, Merry by name, Merry by nature.
What a good, here's the thing. I hope you like saying that forever, because that's what's going to happen. Just so you know, that is what's going to happen.
I think the only way I'll find out is the hard way, if I enjoy saying it forever. So, Jake, content cowboy, but also a caster for Pokemon UNITE. Anyone who's not so familiar with you, can you give them a brief introduction?
Yeah, I make a lot of content for Pokemon UNITE. I kind of started near the beginning of UNITE when it was in beta, and I became one of the bigger people making content for the game. Since then, I've been asked to cast a lot of the official events for the game. I've even done some of the official voiceovers for moments in UNITE. And if you've seen some UNITE content, UNITE stream, or maybe some educational content around the game, you may have seen what I have done.
An absolute luminary in the UNITE world, and one of the select few
Beautiful.
of people
luminary. Wow.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Woo. You could say the Luminion, I guess.
The Luminion of the UNITE world.
We'll go with that. Yeah. From the content cowboy to the lucky Luminion. I don't know.
I've always felt pretty lucky. Sure, let's go with that. Good. I like it.
Bring the luck. Bring the luck to today's episode. I'm very much looking forward, Jake, as I said before, to diving into a little bit of your life story and your handpicked 6 Pokemon that are going to be joining your dream team. So why don't we kick things right off? And I believe what we're starting with is middle school for you and discovering Pokemon.
Yeah, so discovering Pokemon was interesting for me. I've thought about this a lot because I met one of my best friends through Pokemon, best friends to this day through Pokemon. So I took a bus to middle school, and at our bus stop there was this kid. I didn't know this kid. His name was Mike. Still is Mike, by the way. Didn't change it. And we would take a bus to our school, and I saw him playing an RPG on Game Boy, and I had no idea what it was, right? And I've always been super into games, so especially JRPGs and stuff like that. I love Secret of Mana and Chrono Trigger, the early Final Fantasies I was crazy into. So I was very excited to learn what this was, and through kind of learning what it was and talking to him, we became fast friends. He had Pokemon Red, so I went and got Pokemon Blue, and I started my journey with Pokemon right there, and a lifelong friendship with my buddy Mike. And since then, we've played so many Pokemon games together. I remember growing up, so before middle school, we would get there before school, and we would go into the library to play Pokemon because we were very popular. So we'd go to the library to play Pokemon together, and then more and more kids started showing up to the point where there were a lot of kids hanging out in the library before school playing Pokemon together, and it was a really amazing time to be into that game. We would be playing it so much. I remember we would have our Game Boys with us at school, and I remember hearing the music, and I was like, oh my, it's on in my pocket and things like that. So it was such a huge part of my middle school life. And yeah, it led me to one of my best friends, Mike, which was really, really cool. And Pokemon's been a huge part of my life ever since the start there with Pokemon Blue.
There are so many things I love about that. One of which is that the library was your chosen destination to game. It's it's flipping the script. It's showing, no, we're not here to read. We're here to learn in another way, in a more digital way. So what the Pokemon club, so to speak, in that library just grew and grew and grew until everyone was rocking up super early for school. to play
Yes.
Pokemon.
Yeah, there were
Right.
a lot of kids there that were playing Pokemon. I think the librarian was like, we're just going to let these kids in. So we were all hanging out in there. And it was interesting because what would happen is we kind of started to form almost two factions, it felt like, of the library. There were the kids at the back of the library, and then there were the kids at the front of the library. We were kind of front of the library kids. And I remember the back of the library kids were making up lots of rules for all of their battles and stuff. So it was weird when the two groups would clash because like the group at the front, we didn't know what their rules were going to be. And the group at the back, I think very reasonably were kind of bringing in rules to the game that needed to be there. Like, hey, how about nobody uses Mewtwo and stuff like that. So then everyone kind of started to play with these interesting rules, but there was a little bit of a rivalry between the front and back of the library, because nothing gold can stay. At some point, like, we have to fracture off. There has to be a division here. So that was a really interesting part about us being in that library too, is we had people who were taking it seriously, but like in different ways.
We both got a very orderly Pokemon posters behind us, haven't we?
Don't we? I mean, look
Showing
at this
off our
here.
merch.
It's kind of beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. And we've even not showing the same posters on the screen at the same time. I mean,
it's pretty genius of us. We both got a little hoeing going on right there.
A little. So in my preview, I can't really see my hoe, and that's the thing.
I can see it. I can see it. And people at home can see it, and they're furious.
Yeah. And a final question on this little bit. What's Mike up to now?
He works in game development now. A few years ago, he kind of went through a big, like everyone went through kind of like maybe some big changes. He went through a big job change, and he went into game development, like Q&A for game development. And then he's kind of been working his way up. So he's sort of, we both went into games, even though we hadn't been there in years. It just had always been part of our lives. And now both of our jobs kind of revolve around gaming, which is really weird. Yeah.
That's very poetic, I would say.
I think so. There's poetry to it. It rhymes. It's very Phantom Menace. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Now it's time to learn, Jake, the first Pokemon on your dream team. So the way this works is Jake is not aiming to build the best competitive team or anything like that. Just Pokemon that are special to Jake in some way. I have no idea what they are. Jake's chosen them in advance. So let's find out together. Jake, what's the first Pokemon on your team?
My first Pokemon is Squirtle. It's like my all-time favorite Pokemon from Pokemon Blue. He was my guy from day one. I'm fine with Wartortle. I'm fine with Blastoise, but I'm a Squirtle man through and through. He has to be there. I remember when we did this fun thing with Pokemon. I think it was around Gold and Silver time, where we decided to have a Pokemon journey. So around that time, and I think this is kind of coming back, but around that time, every kid our age was playing Pokemon. And I remember we decided to just walk out into the neighborhoods, like go to different neighborhoods looking for kids to battle. Like we were trying to be real life Pokemon trainers. And we found like multiple kids. We would walk up to kids and be like, do you have Pokemon? And like, yeah. I'm like, come on out, let's battle. And I remember we battled this kid, and he had, I'm going to get the level wrong, but it was something like a level 74 Wartortle. And from that, we were like, I respect that. Like, I don't know why you're doing this, but we respected it so much. So just thinking of Squirtle being on the team when, of course, other people would evolve it, I really loved that kid was like, no, Wartortle's the way to go. I'm pressing B every single time this thing needs to level up. So that's a very fun memory of that. And that feels like why I have Squirtle on my team.
Level 74 Wartortle, you say. So Wartortle evolves into Blastoise level 36. So that kid had pressed B, 38 times.
I mean, we'll never be able to fully figure out the math. No. It could take days, but it took a long time. Yeah.
That's, wow. And you know what? It's music to my ears, Jake. Squirtle is my go-to starter. And Pokemon Blue as well. That was my chosen version. So
there you go.
I'm thrilled. You can stay.
I mean, you and I got along like fast friends when we met at EOIC. I think it had a lot to do with that. Yeah.
Yeah. There was an unspoken thing, but now we know. Now we know where that came from. Yeah, that's right. Of course, Jack and I did meet at EOIC in 2024. We were opening the show on the Saturday, day 2 of the event, and we decided to have a little bit of fun with it. But Jake then sort of came in with the I couldn't top that. I couldn't top that. We were telling each other about what was going on in the game. So he was like, well, Jake, let me tell you. And you were like, oh, Charlie, have you heard about VG? But then the final thing you came in, why don't you tell us, Jake? What was the final thing you came in with?
I hit you with Charlie, my sweet prince. And I think that was hard to top. It was hard to top my sweet prince. Well, that was very fun for a few reasons. First off, it's just fun that we got to go out and do that, and it's fun that kind of beforehand we're like, let's have some fun with this, and we're both like, all right, I'm game. And then it was also fun that I didn't know I was doing that until the night before, and you walked up to me going, hey, like, we'll be doing this in the morning, and I thought, I am. And you thought, did you look at the script? And I was like, there's a script? So you really saved me with all of that. I didn't know exactly what I was doing, and I surely didn't know there was a script. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for being game to have fun with it, even though you didn't know there was a script. Yeah, I remember coming up to you that night before because you were with the other Unite casters, and they were like, God. I told you what was going on.
I am classically uninformed with like lots of things. I will miss an email. I will not. I feel like content creation is such a full-time thing that every once in a while I just show up to something and I have no idea what I'm doing there yet. But I'm ready. I'm happy to be there. I just don't know how this is going to go because I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. I think that's entirely fair enough. As you've been saying, it's an all-consuming thing. But hey, if the content turns out well, then
it's all worth it.
Yeah, exactly. Those sweet likes and subs.
Ooh, those likes.
I'm glad I didn't try and top you on My Sweet Prince because I just feel like in the moment you reach a ceiling. And
we got there
past that point.
We got there and we had a lot of fun with it. Yeah,
we did. We absolutely did. Excellent stuff. So yeah, Squirtle also got a lot of love for that. And the idea of you guys almost like a West Side Story kind of deal with you just going around town challenging these people. That's so funny.
It was very fun. And it seems like something that like you think about it and you're like, that's not going to work, will it? No, it did. Literally every kid we would run into on the street had Pokemon and would run out and battle us. And I mean, we're kind of just wiping the floor with them. You know, it's a lot of kids who didn't have teams set up. We have level 100 everything. We're like, good game, really good game, shaking their hands. But it was very, very fun. And it was kind of before you sort of add a lot of very reasonable, like we talked about with like the separation of the library, like very reasonable rules to things. So you just be walking around with Mewtwo and Zapdos and all this stuff. You're just like mopping everybody up. And you're like, yeah, good game. Nice job there. And you don't realize, no, there's actually a good reason that maybe there should be rules here. For sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Suddenly the Cowboy moniker is making a lot of sense. It sounds like you really were out in the Wild West, just challenging left, right, and center. I see. So we're going from there. The next topic that we have to discuss.
So I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. It's weird because I feel like at some point in my life, I sort of drifted away from Pokemon. Like I was kind of around for like Gen 4-ish, 5-ish, but like Gen 6 really had me. And then I really missed 7, and then Gen 8 really had me. So there were different points in my life where I feel like I was in and out of Pokemon. And this was one of them when I started to play poker, like Texas Hold'em. And around that time, poker was like exploding. It was all over the TV. It was a very big thing culturally. For a very brief period of time, I was playing cards professionally. And by that, I don't mean that I was like winning some massive poker tournaments. I just mean I was paying bills by playing cards, again, for like a very short period of my life. And I did not like it. It became such a grind. It was hard to keep my enthusiasm with it. And I ended up not doing that anymore. I always like, this is a weird part of my life because it was a like full life pivot away from, I don't know, kind of this mindset of like, I'm going to be a rich idiot, almost more to like following something I cared about. That's when I sort of transitioned my life to focusing on things I cared a lot more about, things that I always kind of cared about, which was comedy at the time.
I feel like That's a movie.
Good
I can
movie.
see the scene now where the dust clears and what you see is just like a comedy theater in front of you. You take a step in. I can see it now. We're going to go from poker back to Pokemon now.
Ooh.
And you're going to hit me with your second Pokemon on your dream team. Who's joining Squirtle?
So this is an old school favorite of mine. I had to get one more Pokemon from like my first experience with the game there in Pokemon Blue, and I was such a big Alakazam fan. I loved it. He was so good. This was before they split like special and special defense, so he was even better. It was just like crazy, like just a sweeper that you'd put out there and destroy everything. And when people started reasonably banning things like Mewtwo and Zapdos and all that stuff, like Alakazam was my dude. I absolutely loved this Pokemon. And again, I could have went with something further along in my Pokemon journey, but as I was putting together my team, and this is one of the ones I hate that I put on the list, to be fair. As I was putting together my team, I was like, no, I need one more of like the OGs that was always with me, and that was Alakazam.
I like how you circumvent the ban on Mewtwo by going with essentially Mewtwo's protege.
Well, hey, whatever. He's fast and does a lot of damage too. Yeah.
It is actually Alakazam. So, do you remember even now, like, trying to catch that Abra and it just teleporting away?
Yeah, I do. You do kind of remember those moments, right? We did this thing where we would, and I'm realizing now, like, why you wouldn't want to do this, but back then we didn't know. We didn't know there'd be another Pokemon. We didn't know any. So, like, we would get to the end of the game, kind of catch everything, and just wipe our save file and do it all again because we had so much fun doing it. Now, of course, you would just grind and keep all the stuff. I think at one point we realized, like, hey, let's not do that anymore, and we finally like kept our save. But yes, I must have been through a million Abras teleporting away from battle. It must have happened to me literally like probably 1,000 times easy, me trying to catch it throughout all the times we reset our games.
Yeah. And I mean, back then, you know, you only get the one Master Ball, and it's not like there are that many other balls that make it easier to catch certain kinds of Pokemon. So, yeah, I think you and I are probably from a similar generation, Jake.
I think so.
Yeah, memories of that Gen 1.
Yeah.
Alakazam, a fantastic choice. And
I loved it.
To me, it was always such an elusive Pokemon as well, because I sort of... Sounds like at your school there was a big old contingent of you playing Pokemon. I think my brother's age they were, but then my age maybe slightly past, so I would struggle to find people to trade with for those evolutions like that, you see.
Yeah, you'd be walking around with a Kadabra like, it's good. It's like not as good, but it's good.
Yeah, it's... What, there was Machoke and there was Haunter and Graveler as well.
Yeah, and Graveler, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you had the version-specific Pokemon. Like, Scyther, wasn't he? And Pinsir.
Pinsir was blue, Scyther was red, I believe,
Yeah. And then, what was Jinx one of them? No, I don't remember. There were a couple.
I think Jinx was just an in-game trade, I think. But yeah, no, you're so right. And we've got a little Battle of the Quiffs going on here as well.
That's right. The Battle of the Hair Quaffs. Who will win once it gets crazy?
Yes, by the end of the episode, it's sort of like an added like inch,
which is like blow drying our hair. So like a big thing for me.
Okay, so from Alakazam, let's talk about what you sort of began to touch on with that previous life topic that you mentioned, and that is stand-up and improv.
Yeah, so my world falls apart, as worlds tend to, and I start kind of trying to figure out what means something to me. Now, obviously, you've done a lot of performance and stuff like this, so was that a straight line for you, or did you have a moment where you had to pivot and go, oh, actually, this is what I care about? What did that look like for you? I'm curious.
That's a really good question. So I was at university. I was really enjoying performing there. In my final year, I was like, I don't know, I was probably just a bit tired, to be honest. And then after graduating, I tried other stuff. I thought, okay, I've got that out of my system. I'll try, getting work experience, something more reliable. But it's only when doing that different thing that you realize, no, I now know, having tried something else, that the performing thing is for me. And so that's when I applied to drama school and stuff like that. But how was it for you?
You know, you have that moment as a young person where, and I guess it could come at like many different points in your life, right? But you have to ask yourself, is the path you're on the path that you should be on, want to be on? What does your life look like in 5-10 years? What do you care about actually doing? I remember thinking, like, I really want to do comedy. So I wrote my first stand-up set, and I went to an open mic. I was still in Las Vegas, but I went to an open mic at kind of like a country bar sort of thing. And I went up there and I did my first set, and some jokes actually did really well, and some jokes actually did not do well at all. But it was good enough to get me to want to keep doing it. So I was doing stand up for a while, and I got to say, I don't fully love stand-up comedy. There was something there are things about it I really like. The thing I love about it, obviously, like performing in front of an audience is one of my absolute favorite things. Even though I am I get so nervous beforehand, like so nervous. The second I walk out on stage, it's like it all goes away. I don't know what it is. It's something about that anticipation. It's like really hard. You like I almost feel sick with how nervous I get sometimes. But then once you're in it, you're in it. And I absolutely love that. I love the immediate response of it. Like, you tell the joke, you get the laugh, or you tell the joke, you don't get the laugh, but you get it right then. It's happening right now. I love that. I've always loved comedy. But stand up, it did feel sort of I don't know. I just felt alone with it. You're really alone with it. Even though there's like kind of a culture of comedians and stuff, everyone's like working on stuff, but you're all working on things, but you're all kind of alone. And a lot of the, open mics and stuff, it's just in front of a bunch of other stand-ups, and I don't know, it wasn't the best. And then I moved out to Los Angeles, California, and I moved right up the street from this comedy theater called the Upright Citizens Brigade, or some people know it as UCB. It was an improv comedy theater founded by like Amy Poehler is probably the biggest name that you would recognize from that, from like Parks and Rec and SNL and stuff. So they created this comedy theater in New York. They brought it out to LA, and it was right down the street from my house. And I saw my first improv show when I moved out to LA, and I was blown away. I immediately knew that's what I needed to be doing. That's like the kind of performance I had to do. I immediately signed up for classes. Not immediately, like I'm not in the audience doing it, but very quickly. I signed up for classes, and I went through all like their improv classes to learn how to do improv comedy, because it's more than just getting on stage and being funny. Like, learning how to do improv, I think, is actually a really valuable skill. You learn to listen to other people. You learn how to build something together rather than kind of like doing your own thing. And I went through all the classes, and then they have this process there where you audition to get put on one of the teams. And like every year, I think the first year I auditioned, there were like 700 people who auditioned. The next year I auditioned, I think there was almost 1,000. And of that, I think like 8 people or so get put on a new team. I think some years they've done more, but like the first year I auditioned, I made it to like the second round. There's like this callback round, didn't get on. And then my second year auditioning, I did my audition, made it to the callback round, and I thought I had a great audition. And there's this moment where calls start going out. Like, I think this is true kind of any like thing you audition for. Like, calls start going out, and everyone's finding out who got on like the teams and everything. It's very, very, it's like a big deal. And I remember not getting a call right away, and thinking like, I didn't get it. That's okay. Like, I just kind of started. This is like my second time auditioning. Most people don't get it until like years and years of auditioning through this process. And I was driving to the theater to go see a show that night. I remember thinking, I'm going to work so hard. I'm going to be so good the next time. Like, I'm undeniable. They'll put me on a team. And then right as I was parking my car, I got the call that they put me on a team there. I was like over the moon excited about it. I couldn't believe it. I kept telling the artistic director like to shut up. I was like, shut up. Really? And he was like, yeah, shut up. And then I remember walking into the show that night, watching these people that like were like amazing comedians, thinking like, I'm going to be on that stage very soon. And then I was, and I performed there, and still kind of do for years through their like this thing called Herald Night, and then later on like what they call like a graduated team, when you're just doing like your own show and stuff. And performing improv comedy has been one of my favorite things I've ever done in my life. I loved it.
there's so much to unpack from that. I mean,
I know.
first
Sorry.
thing
I feel like I should
I love
like
it.
break down, like stop. I should like stop more while I'm talking.
No, I love it. It's no, I don't want to interrupt your momentum. The first thing I want to know is how many shut ups do you think it would have taken for them to say, okay, actually, we take the offer back?
I mean, that's a good question, right? Like, how long until they would have been like, "Hey, actually, we picked the wrong guy." I don't know,
Yeah,
but I think they're doing like the best part of their job in that
yeah,
moment, which is the call
yeah,
telling someone they got it, because they also have to
for
do
sure.
those like situations where they're telling people like they're cut. People get cut every year, and it's
Wow,
kind of
okay.
heartbreaking. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, UCB, that is, yeah, that's world famous. I've certainly heard of that. That's very, again, yeah, there's an entire episode's worth in that. That's absolutely fascinating. And then, so I'm going in reverse now. So then
Yeah.
with the stand up, I totally, yeah, as someone who was doing a one man show last year, I totally get the lonely thing. It's sort of
Mm-hmm.
everyone's on your side, but yeah, you sort of, it's, there's no one who you can really debrief with afterwards, is there? Because it's just you
Yeah.
who knows
Yeah.
what it's like, I guess.
And when when it
Um,
goes well, like you did it, I'm
yeah,
sure
yeah,
when your
yeah,
one man show killed, you're like, yes, that like it's such a great feeling. But it felt better when we had a good show. It really did. Like I've had
yeah,
stand up
yeah,
sets that I felt like I absolutely crushed, but it felt better when this group of people all got together and we were like, oh
yeah,
my, and then when you said the thing, you brought it back
yeah,
and like I couldn't talk because of like that
yeah,
is
yeah,
so
yeah,
good,
yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah,
so
for
good.
sure. Also, it's really interesting to hear that you get so nervous before going on stage. That's
Yeah.
I'm sure that's something that will surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I've gotten better with it, the
Yeah.
more and more I've done it, because now I've like performed a lot, a lot. And it's
Mm.
weird. I've always thought it was odd that this thing that I really love, it also causes me so much like stress. Like I'm so stressed about it. But I loved it so much. Like I had to fight through it being incredibly uncomfortable. Like it's like it really made me like sick sometimes, I felt like, but I loved it. And I was like,
Mm.
I'm gonna get better at it. And the more and more I did it, the less and less that became a thing, for sure.
Yeah. I think the two kind of do go hand in hand actually, because you care about it so much.
Yeah.
You're wanting it to go as well as it possibly can, I guess. And so, yeah, entirely understandable. So I guess you were the sort of version that you've told us. The
Hmm.
comedy sort of came quite left field, but presumably even when you were younger, you had this sort of performing angle to yourself.
Yeah, I remember this was probably before Pokemon or right around the same time in middle school as well. Uh, Me and my friend Mike, we would grab kids and we would sit them down in front of us and we would play a game. There was a show on TV called Make Me Laugh or something, and I
Mm.
really think they pulled an audience member up and literally a comedian would just tell jokes at them, trying to get them to laugh.
Mm.
That was the whole concept of the show. I didn't watch much of it. So me saying that was the whole
Mm.
concept of the show maybe isn't fair, but that's what we knew of the show. And we would do that like before school. We would sit them down and see which one of us could make them laugh. So we were doing that. And then in middle school, I was in what was called drama. I want to say it was called drama in middle school. So I
Mm.
didn't get to, like, everyone signed up for guitar. I was like, oh, guitar. And they were like, it's full. And I was like, ah. And I was like, oh, this other thing. They were like, it's full. And then I got drama, which actually is something that I always was interested in, but I think I was afraid of it.
Mm.
So I was in drama, and that was a very interesting experience, like learning how to be on stage, something that terrified me so much, and learning how to perform dramatic things, which I'm not very good at, and learning how to perform comedic things, which I actually did a pretty decent job at. So that was kind of the first steps of that was there. And then I think I let that go for years. I think I cared a little bit more. I don't know. You kind of care about things. This isn't true of everyone. This is true of me, maybe. But you care about things that are more superficial, and then you look back on them and think like, oh, I wish I would have focused more on what I was like passionate about rather than like
Mm.
trying to seem cool or something, you know?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think we can all identify with that. Um, But now, talking of identifying, it's time to identify the
Ooh.
third member of your dream team. So, Squirtle, Alakazam, who's next?
Next is going to be from Gold Silver. This is probably my favorite Pokemon game of all time was Gold Silver. The moment when you finish the game and then they're like, guess what? You're going right back through like red and blue. You're like, are you serious? They're like, well, yeah, we're serious, baby. So like it blew our minds that was happening. Gold Silver was insane. I had to bring one of my like favorites. Do I have him back here? Where is he? I know I've got him. Yes, my boy. Ampharos is my guy. And I needed some Gold Silver representation. So here he is. I hope he comes to Unite. I love this. I don't know why I love that line so much. In fact, I find that I usually pick up the electric line. So like I'll grab like Luxray, Boltund. Like I always feel like I grab one of those early electric Pokemon and put him on my team. But for some reason, I just love the design. He was my dude. So he has to be here.
Once again, Jake, Gold and Silver, that's me all over as well. Are we just like parallel universe?
I think so. I think they made two versions of us, and they're like, we're going to put one in the US, we're going to put one in the UK. We're just going to see what happens.
Yeah.
And then they meet up, and they're like, oh no, if they talk too much, they fuse.
Yeah. Give them the same hair products, and then before you know it, the world is just imploding. Great. And I don't know. I think Ampharos makes a lot of sense because Mareep you can find pretty early on in Gold and Silver.
Yep.
And so I can see you developing a very close bond with that Pokemon from early on. And that moment when 8-bit Professor Oak appears and says, yeah, we're going Medicano, baby.
Dude, it blew my mind. It's like, it was like the twist at the end of a movie, but like 10 times as you're like, are you serious? And then you start going through, you're like, the whole thing? Like I'm doing the whole thing.
But then like you're climbing up Mount Silver and you're thinking, where's this going? What are we going to find some kind of new legendary? And then it's you from Red and Blue is the final boss. That for me when I was younger was just like,
dude,
just a standing ovation.
I totally agree. You know? It was such a home run. Like amazing.
Yeah. Ampharos, very nice. So presumably when you do a playthrough again of Gold and Silver, that finds its way on your team.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. And now let's go from that to your daughter.
Yeah. So I'd been performing at UCB for like 5 years or something like that. And partway through there, I proposed and got married to my girlfriend at the time, now my wife. That's how that works, by the way.
Thank you.
It's just because I know you're like, wait, hold on. And I'm like, no, don't worry, I'll get you there. I actually performed. I proposed on stage during a show at UCB. Like we tricked her. I tricked my wife into thinking it was just like oh, it's gonna be a fun show. We need you to sit on the stage. So I did that. We got married, and a little while after getting married, we had our first child, our daughter, Johnny Rose Sprague is her name. And I think having a kid, I'm not saying anything profound right here. I think having a kid, it does change your life in some pretty phenomenal ways. It changes your priorities. It changes the way you interact with other people. It changes, what you care about. In some ways, it makes you less driven towards something you're doing, and in other ways I think it like puts a bigger emphasis on some of the things that you're focusing on, so that you can provide a good life for your family. So I feel like my daughter being born really changed so much of my life and my perspective. I remember her being born, being so happy. It was just like a point in my life that felt like pure joy, was her being born. And that time in my life, that kind of that brief period of her being really, really little. I was mostly the one at home with her because I was a comedian. So I was almost entirely useless. So my wife was the breadwinner. She was doing like all the hard work at that time to provide for the family. I was like still performing comedy and I was teaching improv and stuff like that, but I was mostly spending time at home with my daughter, which can be really hard, but also I think was Yeah, it was just a really good moment in my life. It was really joyful, and it was also a real softening moment. Yeah, it was. Of course, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me, and it really changed my life in some big ways. We lived downtown in Los Angeles, in a like kind of like a high rise downtown,
Mhm.
and then we moved to like a suburb in LA right before COVID. I don't know if you remember that, but that was a whole thing.
Oh yeah.
And we moved away from downtown, and it was just like a big transition in my life. And then there was like COVID, which also was a big like transition in my life. But that was a huge part of my life, and still is, of course. It was having my daughter. It was, yeah, it changed. I feel like it changed everything, at least from. I mean, it did change literally almost everything, but it feels like it definitely changed everything from how I approach life, for sure.
Yeah, well, entirely understandable. Um, Johnny Rose, your daughter,
Hmm.
and you proposed on stage.
Yeah.
That's I love that. I love that idea. And I mean, at the time, your now wife must have been like, "Is this part of the scene?" How did she
Yeah.
react?
There was a little bit where it was like, is this part of the scene? And then I was like, no, this is very real. Like, I remember saying that to the audience.
Mm,
Um, got a few good laughs while I was proposing, which, isn't
mm.
really what you're going for.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
that was very fun. And yeah, I remember I proposed, took her off stage. I had like a limo waiting, and we kind of drove around the city and stuff. It was a pretty cool night.
Oh my goodness! Wow, that's incredible. Um, yeah, and I mean, so how long before COVID did your daughter arrive?
She was in 28, like the end of 2018. So we had kind of a
Okay.
year before, and then we moved like right before everything shut down. It was kind of crazy.
Mm,
Felt very fortunate too, because we lived in a
yeah.
high rise downtown with like
Mm,
elevators and stuff. I just imagine going through that at the time would have been very
mm.
stressful. So it was nice that
Oh
we
yeah.
kind of moved away from that. We just decided, we have a
Yeah.
kid, we would like some more space and stuff like that.
Mm.
Yeah, and we moved away like right before that.
Wow. Yeah, and as you say, I mean, two seismic, well, three in a way, seismic shifts
Hmm.
happening quick succession. That's,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, a lot doesn't begin to cover it. I mean, how was it dealing with all that?
Yeah, it was weird having. I know, I'm sure everybody has like a really interesting experience with like COVID and stuff, right? Of course, we were all together as a family. So I don't know, we kind of had it kind of as good as you can get. But I felt like it was weird having a little kid that didn't get to see little kids for so long, you know?
Mm,
That
yeah,
was tough.
yeah, for sure, absolutely. It's so strange thinking back to that time, isn't it? It doesn't quite feel real.
Yeah,
Almost,
doesn't it also
it
feel like
sounds
a
like
memory wipe almost, where you're like, "Oh
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
that happened."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It feels like it's ethereal. If you were to describe COVID to someone, it would sound like the plot of a terrible film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now let's go from that into what your fourth Pokemon is, Jake. So Squirtle, Alakazam, Ampharos, who's number four?
Now, my fourth Pokemon was kind of like one of those moments where I remember coming back into Pokemon and just getting really, really into it. And a Pokemon that was always with me was Gudra. Gudra was like
Mm,
right there. I don't know why. When I first caught, what is it, Gumi? Is that the first one?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I remember thinking this is gonna be good. And I'm not the kind of person, at least I wasn't at the time, to be looking things up and knowing where things go. Like, I kind of want to surprise myself with what happens in the
Mm,
game. And I like had him on my team the whole way. After I caught him, I had him the whole way through. I used him to battle all my friends, and I was like, no, Gudra's sick. And cool enough, it came to Unite, which is really fun because I always
mm,
loved this Pokemon a lot. So have to bring Gudra on the squad.
yeah. So yeah, I feel like in every Pokemon game and every main series game, you find a little Pokemon, then you
Uh-huh.
catch it and learn its Dragon type, and you think, could this be?
Yes.
Could this be
Is
the
this
Dragonite of Gen One?
is
You
this
know,
the
is
big
this
thing?
the
Yeah. Is
one?
this my
Yeah,
Tyranitar? Like, will it happen?
exactly.
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
yeah,
And Gudra was
yeah.
that for me, for sure.
Well, yeah, 100%. And but if you're someone who doesn't look stuff up, you don't want to get spoiled on the game.
Mhm.
And I fully subscribe to that camp as well. But you can only evolve Sligo into Gudra in the rain, right? So did that just happen by chance for you, or were you trying and trying and then it happened?
I might have been told it. So it's not that
Mm-hmm.
I don't look things up, but like me and my friends would always share information and stuff like that. Someone might have said it to me that that's how it
Mm-hmm.
happened. I don't know if I would have like just luckily had that happen. I bet someone told me.
Gudra, any one of those Pokemon that's supposed to be super powerful, but is fundamentally just a happy guy.
Yeah,
is always
it's like,
a
oh,
pleasure
he's
to
a
see.
sweetheart, but he's a monster. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, great. And now, so there's a 5-letter word that's been coming up, and that is unite. Right. So we're now gonna explore your content journey. And obviously, a big part of your content is unite, and then a question that's obviously necessary for that is, how did you, having gone from playing the main series games, how did you go to discovering Unite and getting into that?
Yeah. So during like the COVID and everything, I couldn't perform. I couldn't do live comedy. We actually did, I bet, some of the first like live Zoom comedy, like Zoom improv shows. I remember our theater was shut down and my group was like, what if we stream like a Zoom call as if it's an improv performance? Like we pretended it was kind of a corporate meeting, but we were all like, we were going to do a very silly corporate meeting, and we like performed it live on YouTube. And that was the first time I'd ever really messed around with YouTube at all. And I did that with my improv team. And it was actually, it was so fun. Everyone that would normally come to the theater, because our theater was, it's still around, like the best. It's this small black box theater. I think like 150 people at the most, like with people sitting on stage and standing could be packed in there. And it was always packed. Like every show was sold out. It was the best place you could ever perform. And everyone who would normally go see our show came to us doing that live. So there were hundreds of people in this live stream watching this weird live improv comedy show. And from there, I started making just content at home, stuff for Twitter and Instagram. And then I kind of started dabbling in TikTok a little bit. And I also was like, well, I'm home. I got nothing to do. I can't go teach improv, even though I did do some like online teaching of it. Like I can't teach it. I can't really perform it. I've always wanted to stream games. I'm just going to start streaming games I like. And then I start putting like little things up on YouTube. I would make like a piece of content a week. And then I was like, you know what? I bet I can make a piece of content every few days, like every 3 days. So I started making a piece of content every 3 days. It started with like just something I love. So I loved Ghosts of Tsushima. It's this game on PlayStation. And I just made a video called like Ghosts of Tsushima Deserves Your Love. And I talked about all the things I loved about Ghosts of Tsushima. And then I was just making general gaming content. It was like a video a week, a video every couple days, maybe a video a day. Okay, we can do a video a day, maybe a couple videos a day. And I just started making a ton of gaming content, and it started growing little bit by little bit by little bit. And on the horizon, I saw Unite coming out. I always have loved MOBAs. Like I love League, I love Smite, I love so many games like that. I played like almost every MOBA that's ever existed, because I came from StarCraft and Warcraft, where they sort of like they were invented basically. And I loved MOBAs. I saw a Pokemon MOBA. I was so excited about it. I was playing it in the beta. I was making some content for it. And something happens when you're making content online. When something clicks, you feel it. It's a seismic shift. It's completely different from the other stuff you're doing that might have a couple hundred views, maybe like 1,000 views or something like this. And then all of a sudden, the Unite content I was making was way more popular than everything else, like crazy. I started getting tons of subscribers. I went from, I don't know, 1,000 or something subscribers to in a few months 25,000. It was just like happening so fast. But that's what happens in content creation when you sort of get picked up by the algorithm, and at the same time what you're doing is popular. Like the game you're working on or whatever it is popular. People are searching for it. Like YouTube starts recommending your videos, and then all of a sudden Unite started taking off, and I was right there with it. And it was just kind of like an explosion. Really, like I'd been making content for a while, but that was the first time something really clicked, was Unite.
Well, you were there with it right from the very start, as you said. I think that's a massive part of it. Can you just, for anyone who's not familiar, can you just spell out what a MOBA is?
Yeah, it's it is a multiplayer online battle arena game, and they came from, I don't know the first time I saw it. I feel like I saw it in StarCraft slightly before Warcraft 3, but Warcraft 3 really made it a thing. So Warcraft and StarCraft, they're real-time strategy games, and inside them they had this thing called use map settings, and later custom games or whatever they called it in Warcraft, where people would make game modes inside, and you would like hop in and play people's made game modes. And there was one called Defense of the Ancients. I don't know if there was one that was technically before that, but that was the big one, Dota, Defense of the Ancients. And you would pick a hero and you would control it around sort of a map where you're like knocking out, I use knockout all the time because of Pokemon now. You're like knocking out waves of minions, leveling up, getting new abilities as this one hero, and then fighting enemies inside the map with usually an objective to make it to their base and destroy it. So that happened, and then games spawned out of this. Like real games were like, hey, we could actually make a game. Like League of Legends was going, let's just make that. And then Dota literally is like, we're Dota 2, an Honor of Kings and Heroes of New Earth or whatever. There's like a lot of games that came from this idea from StarCraft and Warcraft. Originally, it was all mouse keyboard. Since then, there have been more that have been on console. My favorite MOBA, like right up there, Unite and this are like the two MOBAs I've like spent the most time with. Is Smite, which is like a third person MOBA where you're gods sort of fighting, and oftentimes there's a map. Usually it's the same map like all the time. They might like change some aspects of it, but it's multiple lanes where minions are going down. You're trying to like knock out as many of those minions as you can so you can gain levels and gain gold, buy items, and get more powerful. Unite is a condensed version of that. So there are 2 lanes in Unite with kind of a central area. Unite calls it a central area, but every other game calls it a jungle. This like central area where you're all getting experience fighting these wild Pokemon. You use that experience to, and Eos energy is what the game calls it, to score goals and enemies' goals. Whoever has the higher score at the end wins. But it's essentially the same format that you've seen from other MOBA games out there. It's just condensed into a 10-minute format with Pokemon. So I was so excited about it. And I feel like the best thing about Unite was that they nailed how a Pokemon really would feel. Like when you play Snorlax, you feel like Snorlax. When you play Greninja, you feel like Greninja. I think that's the best thing about Unite is they nailed that so hard. So that's Unite kind of in a nutshell, and that's a MOBA.
That's really useful to hear. And so this is really interesting. So do you think that without the pandemic, you wouldn't have lent into content creation that hard, and potentially wouldn't be here where you are now?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think it was born out of needing to find something, wanting to find something. There was a weird moment. When you're really in something, I think it's hard to see what's outside of it. So I remember being really into like performing at the theater, and I would do some like writing and acting stuff around Los Angeles. And there's a weird desperation and almost like, oh, I hope I get chosen for something as part of being an actor. And it's the worst. I hate it. I remember driving back from an audition in Santa Monica once thinking, I never want to do that again. Like I hated it so much. I knew they didn't like me. I didn't like them, but mainly because they didn't like me. And I just felt awful about it. I felt awful about that whole process. And then the pandemic forced me to make things on my own. I'm very thankful that something kind of jarred me out of this little loop that I was stuck in, because I need to be making things. That's what I thrive in that environment. So I was home. I was just making like dumb videos on my phone and stuff. I felt like, hey, this is what everybody like. We're all on an equal playing field right now. Nobody's got their cool cameras and all this stuff. I can actually just do this and have fun. I wish I would have done it years before. Like I wish I would have just done that before when I kind of felt those urges and when I felt like I was sick of the little system that I was kind of in. But yeah, the pandemic really forced me to do that.
You're speaking to me on so many levels there, Jake. Yeah, completely sympathize with that feeling. And
well, I mean, you made a one-man show, so I think you probably had that moment where you're like, I love this, and also like I gotta make this thing for me, no one's gonna write your one-man show. Exactly. It's really rare that someone else writes your one. Does someone write your one-man show?
Tom Hanks, actually.
Wow. Forget everything I said. That's crazy. Wow. So stupid that I said that, and then it was Tom Hanks. Jeez. Well, I mean,
no, it's it was based on my experience of the pandemic, actually, but we won't get into that now. But as you say, it's sort of, I think, you were joking about being grateful for COVID, but I think actually, in many ways, obviously not in every way, but in many ways, people will be grateful in a way just because it's an opportunity to take your foot off the gas and just to reflect on, as you say, what's important to you and what you really want to achieve. I guess.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that's and it's also, I think it's encouraging for anyone to hear about a positive story like that comes out of the pandemic. So thanks for sharing that. And
you're
you
very welcome. Well, you're welcome.
Thank
Glad
you.
you liked it.
Thank you. Thank you for your openness generally on the podcast. Is great. But now it's time for you to share your 5th Pokemon.
Ooh.
I hope you're as up for sharing that.
Okay, so this is a Gen 8 Pokemon. I love Gen 8. It was the last one that I like. I know, like, I try to like complete my decks and all that. I have not done that in Gen 9. In Gen 8 I did. Played a ton of it. It's in Unite. It was one of the releases in Unite and I loved it, and it's Cramorant. So Cramorant, I go to Pokemon Unite. It's one of the release Pokemon. It's it has 2 really interesting play styles. So one sort of a standard, like what you would expect is like kind of a mage type character in some of these games, where it's just attacking at range. It's got a move that knocks people up and a move that kind of does some damage. Surf will like pull them towards you a little bit. It had a cool like Unite move. All the characters in Pokemon Unite have like a big special move called a Unite move, and it was pretty cool. It's like a massive zone, and it would just shoot tons of Aracudas at the enemy. It was very fun. Like, some of its play style is just kind of crazy hard to counter it at times. They nerf it all the time, which if you're not familiar with like something like this, like a balance patch will come to Pokemon Unite and they'll like buff something, like give it better stats or abilities. They'll nerf something, like take away stats and like kind of abilities. Cramorant always gets tons of weird nerfs, even though it's not heavily played. And it was one of my first Pokemon that I fell in love with in the game, because it was not super popular. Everyone's playing Charizard, everyone's playing Greninja, stuff like that. So Cram has to be on the team because of Unite and because I love Gen 8.
Yeah, I like that it represents a couple of different aspects there. The goofy thing it nails so well, but then I think one of my favorite things about the franchise is that each Pokemon is shown some love in some way.
Yes.
And the fact that Unite is, really shines a light on Cramorant. I believe Dodrio as well. That's Pokemon.
Dodrio's a really interesting one in Unite. Another one was Greedent. For the longest time, it was unbelievably good. Also one of my favorites from Unite. Yeah.
Did you said to me before that Gen 7 you were there were other things going on?
Yeah, for whatever reason, for Gen 8. That's the only gen that I've not played a single moment of. Like, I've played every single other game, even like some I didn't play as much. Like 9 I haven't played as much. But like in 8 I played an insane amount. 7 was weird because I was so into 6. And then 7 it must have just been a time in my life where it wasn't what I was doing, and I haven't touched it at all. There are Pokemon, you could show me a picture of a Pokemon from 7, I'd be like, I bet that's not real. Like, you could show me something, I go, I don't even know what these are. They're Ultra Beasts? That's crazy.
Yeah, but so then coming into Gen 8, you must feel a particular attachment to that generation, maybe?
Yeah, I really loved it. It felt like kind of going back home to like how I would play Pokemon games of the past, and just I vibed with it really well.
Yeah. No, I love Gen 8 as well, yeah, for sure. Great, okay. So we've got 5 of your team, so we'll fill out that final slot in due course. But now we're going to turn to now.
Yeah.
So from your content creation to where you are right now.
Yeah, now it's just it's been a weird, interesting time in my life, going from the start of Unite, where I remember right when the game came out, I was very sick. But my content was like kind of going, like, you could feel it. Like I said, you see it in the numbers. You're getting all these comments, all these subscribers. And I remember editing videos of Unite, and literally every single sentence I would be editing out me coughing and stuff. Like, I was so sick, but I remember telling my wife, like, no, I think there's something here. Like, something's happening that has not happened to me making content yet. I feel like I'm onto something. And I remember working through an absolute miserable cold for like a week or something like that. And then kind of coming out the other end, establishing myself as one of the like bigger creators in the game. And they had their Unite Championship Series, which is the series where the pros would all get together and play. They had like a cool prize pools, like $1 million prize pool. Teams from all over the world were going to get together and compete. Their first Worlds back, I think, since the pandemic, which was in London. And right before they announced the series, I made a video of me just walking down the street, like casting stuff, like street signs and cars and stuff like that. Like the joke, like, I can cast anything. You should have me cast Pokemon Unite. And I think that video, on top of the fact that a couple of my earlier videos were watching some of the first Unite tournaments, and they were very popular. Just because I think everyone was like, what's a Unite tournament? What are the best players playing? What does this look like? They asked me to cast the first time they had their first cast for the Unite Championship Series. And then I have been casting a video game ever since. I've done all their events. I never cast video games before. I didn't know what any of the words were, like people would say, like, do you do color? Do you do play by play? I'm like, yeah. I didn't know what any of it meant. I just kind of was getting on there, vibing, talking about Pokemon Unite. I think doing improv comedy has helped me in a lot of situations like that, because I'm never worried about what's going to happen. I'm not saying I'm going to do the best job. Okay. In fact, sometimes I don't at all. But I'm going to do the best job I can in this moment. And whatever you throw at me, like, I'm going to roll with it. I'm going to do it. I think that's one of the best gifts improv has ever taught me, is like the best thing I can be is me in that moment, like trying to rise to the occasion and doing the absolute best I can. And fortunately, they thought I did a good enough job. And now I cast a ton of Pokemon Unite stuff, and I've been with the game for a couple years now. I just cast at EUIC there, and I met you in London. It was a great time. I've got to do little things where I walk through the Pokemon Center on video, and I bring in an event for Pokemon. So it's just it's been a little slice of heaven getting to do it all, and I've been very fortunate with it. So that's where I'm at right now, is just kind of things are going well. Very fortunate. I have my second child was born. His name is Bear. Bear is here, and he's just like a sweet little guy, and my life's pretty good. So don't mess it up. Like, don't, if you're out there trying to mess it up, don't even try. It's actually pretty solid right now. Be mad if you did.
So I think, there's been some luck along the way, but also, it's the work that you put in the very beginning that allowed you to get to this point. And some right place, right time. But
I think a lot of that, right? I mean, there is luck, and I look at this every once in a while. Sorry that I'm like pulling something up right here. If you look at like one of my playlists here, I don't even know what it's up to at this point, but inside of like one of my playlists for Unite, there are over 2,000 videos. So like, yes, that's in like one playlist for stuff I made from the game. With anything, there's right place, right time. There's noticing what's going on. There's a degree of luck, but also like when you look back at what you've done, you're like, oh yeah. I mean, I don't know how many other people have made thousands and thousands of videos about Pokemon Unite. Like, I kind of understand why I'm here. And then also, there are moments where I'm going to get this quote wrong, and I'm not even going to try, but it's something about how luck is like when like hard work and whatever like meet like the right time.
I think it's opportunity, hard work and opportunity, I think.
Something like that.
Maybe.
And there is a huge element of being fortunate in all that timing, but you also have to be ready to kind of strike while the iron's hot. I know I got that one right. I'm sure of it.
No, it's actually the lead.
Strike while the lead's hot. Don't ruin my life over this. I have a good life. Don't ruin it.
How many times did this come up at EUIC, Jake? Come on.
You're right.
Okay, so and then as you say, improv, stand up, it really does pave the way. Sometimes, you just don't know. You're doing all these things and you enjoy them separately, and you don't quite know what they're leading towards. And then something like the casting comes along, and it just sort of neatly ties it all together for you.
Yeah, I remember hearing conversation. I think Conan O'Brien was talking about this, and how like all the little things you do in your life, you don't know like what what they all mean or whatever. And then you realize as you step back, it's kind of like a mosaic as to what it all turns into. It's not like these individual moments. It's all of these things together sort of make the picture of what your life looks like. And I find that all of the things that I've done have helped me do what I'm doing now in like some small ways and some huge ways. Like walking out on stage with you, you've been a performer and stuff like that. I didn't really fully know my script. I did my best to remember all of it here, but also I think some of the stuff I've done let me meet a moment like that and go, oh, I'm going to have fun with this dude. And we did have a lot of fun. Whereas otherwise I could be like, this is the worst moment of my life. Like I can't remember what I'm going to say. So yeah, I think it's all a building block towards that. And I assume like with the stuff you do with like Pokemon, I assume all of your performance, all of that has prepared you. Like I remember you walked out on stage without your cue cards. Pretty bold move, by the way. Actually, really trying to show me up there. But like, right? Hasn't it really like benefited you? I assume in a huge way.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we have a similar perspective on that. I think that at the end of the day, what we're doing is for entertainment. So
yeah, I do think about that too,
sure.
right? I don't know. I'm sure everyone comes at it from a different angle, right? But I do think, how are people going to enjoy this? You know, a thing I love thinking about with performance and with casting now and all of this is I want to be able to make something that someone who knows nothing about this can enjoy and someone who knows everything about this can enjoy. And that's kind of like tricky, but I do think about that a lot. Like, how can I make this good, fun, entertaining, kind of for everyone who might check it out? I'm sure a lot of people have some really cool perspectives on like when they're casting or performing, but that's what I think about a lot.
All right, Jake, it's that time. It's time that you complete your dream team for us. Who's going to be joining Squirtle and Alakazam, Ampharos, Gudra, Cramorant?
I would never have said this Pokemon without Pokemon Unite. I absolutely love it because of this game. You mentioned it earlier. Dodrio is one of the coolest designs they have had for Pokemon Unite. It's insanely unique. The play style is completely original compared to like basically everything else in the game. It has become one of my all-time favorite Pokemon now because of this. And I love that this, that like this game has given me that, because I know other people who play like sort of a spin-off essentially of the main series. They will find something like that. They will find their Pokemon in Mystery Dungeon that just means so much to them. They will find that. And for Unite, it's this. Dodrio is one of my all-time favorites now because of how much I like it inside of Pokemon Unite.
Okay, well, natural follow-up question then. So why? What about it in Unite appeals to you?
So one of my favorite things is it's one of the most complex characters in the game because it's one of the most difficult to control. So with Dodrio, you have to build up its sprint gauge, and you do that by kind of running around, basically. You like run around, and then your sprint gauge is full, and the way your moves interact with a full sprint gauge is different. So your move Tri-Attack in the game, without a full sprint gauge, like all three of the heads just kind of swipe in front of you for a Tri-Attack, but with a full sprint gauge, they sort of shoot projectiles at your opponents. And then Drill Peck, you'll just like close range, you'll just drill in front of you. But when your sprint gauge is full, you will like drill a line through enemies and drag them with you, doing a ton of damage. So managing the way this Pokemon like controls is everything. It's pretty high skill, but if you stick with it, you will find one of the most fun and rewarding play styles in the entire game. It's so fun.
Well, what a team. Squirtle, Alakazam, Ampharos, Gudra, Cramorant, Dodrio. So now, Jake, what I want you to do, you got to choose just one of them to be your partner Pokemon. Who's it going to be?
In reality, like the better choice I think would be Dodrio. I could ride it around, like kind of side saddle it a little bit. It very much fits with a cowboy aesthetic, but there's no question I'd have to rock with my boy Squirtle. I mean, he's got to be the guy. He's the guy. He's running around. He's got the sunglasses. He's cool and he knows it. I love him.
Yeah. I think there's something a little bit cowboy-esque about the Squirtle line as well. Just firing off those water pistols.
That's true.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised that that's clearly the one that you That
Sorry,
really
I did
kicked
want to
off this
surprise
entire
you. I
journey.
know you're
Yeah,
disappointed, but
no.
it is what it is. I couldn't surprise you, but I would have
Yeah.
liked to.
No, it's just funny for an improv comedian that you didn't surprise me. But hey, no, I'm.
Sorry, I'm just emotional.
No, I fully support that choice. Squirtle, excellent. Now, I want to know, if you were a Pokemon, what do you think you would be?
I always love water types. I would hope I was a water type. What would I be if I was a Pokemon? I should have thought about this.
I'm going to think as well.
I think I'm really down to go with the flow of things. I really do feel like I'd fit water. I think I could fit water pretty well. Like I'm always like what's the easiest route? Like around, through, whatever. Like I'm good with it. I'm flowing. I'm there to have a good time. I'm also I could be pretty jovial, I would say. What's a good jovial water type? Jovial water type. Let me see.
Mantine. That's
maybe.
That's kind of happy. What else? What else is there? There are so many water types. What do we got?
I could be like maybe a not Poliwrath. What's the other one?
Politoed.
Yeah, Politoed might be a fun one for me. I could have some fun with Politoed. You know what? I'll go with that. I'm going Politoed.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. It's I feel like also in the lore, Politoed is a Pokemon that's I don't know, all the other younger versions of Politoed gather around all the Poliwraths and so on, and it learns to move Hyper Voice, so maybe that's to do with your performing.
Hey, that's genius. You're
good.
making it work. I like it.
Yeah, you're making it work. You bring that fun, go with the flow energy. I like it.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to go with that, Politoed.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. What do you think? Do you agree that Jake would be a Politoed? Do you think there'd be something else? Do you think maybe we've mentioned a Pokemon and we're sleeping on it? We don't know. And, Jake's joining in with this air host demonstration once again. And we would love to know what you think that Jake would be. Drop it in the comments. Okay, and now, speaking of you all, it's time for questions from you all. I posted on social media for some questions from you for Jake. Let's see what you've got in store for us. So, here's a question from Bebem. And Bebem would like to know, what's your favorite role in Unite and why?
So the first Pokemon I picked in Unite was the supporter, Eldegoss, who has been one of the best Pokemon throughout the history of the game. Supporters in Unite, like supporters and defenders in the game, are crazy good. I think they've probably been my favorite roles overall throughout the history of the game, especially because no one picks them. Like, look, everyone wants to be Greninja. Nobody wants to help Greninja do well. So oftentimes I'll be supporter or defender. Recently, they've had so many good speedsters. Speedsters are kind of like the high burst damage, get in there. Lately, I feel like I'm just loving the speedsters. However, throughout the history of the game, it's probably been supports and defenders.
It's so cool to get that Eldegoss shout out as well. I'm a big fan of Eldegoss, and again, that's not one that we've historically seen do too well in the video game.
Eldegoss is great. It's been great almost the entirety of the game. It's been one of the best supporters and best Pokemon, period.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, natural for the roles to change. Thank you for that question, Bebem. Now, IronMac404. Unite has offered you to put 3 new Pokemon into the game.
Oh.
Which Pokemon would you pick?
Okay.
And what roles would they play?
Okay. So, first off, a few of the ones I've asked for, I've gotten. So, I was clamoring for Gyarados forever. Like, the idea of starting as a useless Magikarp, I loved it, and they finally brought it to the game. So I've been very lucky with some of the ones I've wanted to see come to the game. Ampharos has been my number one for a while. I think it would be really cool to make it sort of a supporter that stuns your opponents, like focuses a lot on maybe terrain, weather effects, stunning opponents, stuff like that. I think it would be a cool way to have a support in Pokemon Unite. Let me think of some other ones that I've been talking about for a while. I think Vaporeon is the call. And I think they should make it a support as well. I know I'm talking a lot about supports, but we could use more inside Unite. And I think Vaporeon would be a great one. For a third one, I'm trying to think of something like, I would love something unexpected, because the unexpected ones they bring into the game, they've done so well with. One that I think they could nail, or it could be a disaster, is Ditto. So a lot of MOBAs have a character that will copy other characters' moves and abilities. In our game, there are times where things are really imbalanced. So Ditto could become another thing that's really imbalanced. But at the same time, if you do Ditto right, and its moveset is maybe based on your allies or even the enemies in the match, and you can switch kind of, you can like go into them for a moment and use a couple of their moves, then come back out to Ditto. Like, that could be insanely cool. I don't even know what class they would make that. I have no idea. They maybe would consider it an all-rounder or something. But Ditto would be really fun.
Yeah. So much potential, isn't there? It'll be very exciting to see where the game goes. Thank you for that question. I'm at 404. Okay. Dogmere VGC. What's the best tip for new players? And ads, been loving your content since EOIC and enjoy trying out the game. Hashtag Yeehaw. So thank you so much, Jake.
I love that. I own Yeehaw. Never use that again. Let's think. Okay. A couple things. First, your moves, like other games like this, MOBAs, they might have characters have some type of energy system where they can only use so many moves, like a mana system or something. Unite is not like that. Your moves are on cooldown. So I think when you're first starting out, use your moves liberally. Like, get used to using your moves, start to understand which ones do the most damage in a burst or something like that. In general, there's nothing that's stopping you from using your moves a lot. They're the things that do the most, they have the biggest effect your Pokemon's going to have. So make sure you're using your moves a ton. That's like, I think a big tip for new players is you might be a little cautious. Like, just use it a lot when you start, like really get used to it. And then after that, find a couple Pokemon, like maybe 2 or 3 that you really like, and play them a ton till you get to the point where you understand like how they last hit, like how they would have the best chance of securing some of the wild Pokemon. In Unite, you're competing against your opponent for all of the experience in the game. There's none that's like safe for you, really. So you need to learn how to get the last hits on lots of farm and objectives and stuff like that. So if you play a few Pokemon, you'll start to understand how their moves work well enough to the point where you can now start to look at some of the bigger things inside the game. If you're switching Pokemon every single battle, you're going to be focused almost entirely on how that Pokemon works and not all the stuff that's going on, where you should be, where the important fights are, things like that. So get good with a few Pokemon at first, like probably 3 Pokemon at most, and really start to understand them. That way you can focus on the game more broadly.
Makes a lot of sense. Wise advice indeed. Yeah, I mean, lay the foundations to then lay the foundations, and then you can explore more freely, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jake, and thank you for that question, Dogmere. And final question for you from Skeleton Pies. What would you do without your mustache?
Oh, this is hard. Yeah, it's that moment where you realize like it could all get taken away so fast, right? Wow. I used to always have a beard, kind of since like my early 20s or something. Like I had a beard forever. And then when I had my daughter, I think I'm supposed to have a mustache now. Like, I think that's just the way it goes. I feel like you need to embrace the stages of your life. You know, I'm a dad. It's not legally I have to have this mustache, but I do think they can like fine you. It's like a misdemeanor if you don't.
Yeah.
So I felt like I needed to embrace that part of my life. What would I do without it? I do think I kind of lose my powers. So I'm not sure exactly how that works, but I'd probably have to build some sort of robot suit to fight or something, because I would lose like all the innate superpowers that I've gained from having it.
Yeah. Samson and Delilah situation. Yeah, we don't want to find out. We don't want to find out what happens when you lose your mustache. So
no way.
Yeah. Open a rift in space time. That's just the start of it. So
it would be bad.
yeah,
Like I'm not saying it would end the world, but it could get close.
It could.
Yeah.
It could. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that, Skeleton Pies, and let's just not ever find out.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your questions. There. If you want to submit a question for a future episode, a future guest of Chazingdra Chats, then you can find my socials, Chazingdra and Chazingdra Chats on X and Instagram, TikTok as well. All of that stuff. So, Jake, now we've heard a lot about your story over the past little bit, and I want to know now what's next for you.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Content's a very interesting journey because depending on what's going on with Unite and stuff like that, I could be making content like this for years to come. There also is the unknown that always pops up with content. Like, how long will a game last? How long will an audience be interested in something? And I think I'm always like looking around to see if there are other things that I'd like to make content on. I love games in general. I'm very fortunate to be playing a game I love and getting to make content for it. But I would love to find other things that I could also spend some time into and really try to expand my horizons a bit as a content creator. So I think a lot of it's going to be sort of just seeing what comes out there and seeing what really catches my interest, because I think it would be hard making content for something you really didn't like. So you kind of have to have this like really good middle ground of I like it and people also like it. Let's make some stuff and see if people enjoy that. And that's what I think the future would probably look like for me.
Well, it sounds like, you've got plenty of irons in the fire and plenty of other games that you enjoy. So, let's see what the future holds. But it's fantastic where you've got to already. And finally, Jake, looking back to you with your friend Mike on the bus, going to school early, going to the library, playing Pokemon Red and Blue, all the way up to now as very successful Unite content creator and caster. What's the one piece of advice you would give to that younger version of you?
It's a good question. I think I would want to tell a younger me to be nicer to people. I would want to say that. I think, again, like a lot of this is just personal experience, but I like to paint with a broad brush. I think being a young dude, you can be kind of a jerk. You're just like crazy, and again, maybe just me, but someone out there probably recognizes this a little bit in themselves. I would tell myself to be nicer to people. I think that would be important. And I would also tell myself to like do the thing you want to do. Like if you think you want to, like, do it now. Do it right now. Don't wait. It doesn't need to be perfect. Just do the thing. I think that would be really important. And as best you can, like try to be nice to people. In a weird way, like I think people kind of get a lot out of being aggressive at times and kind of a jerk. But you'll find out that you don't need to act like that. You're just being a little, you're just like insecure or something.
As we mature, we sort of, I think we just have less to prove, right? We just enjoy being who we are a lot more. And it's, and just, for us leaning into this game that we've always enjoyed since we were very young, that's also a release in itself, and just sort of, I think there's a lot of truth to that. So thank you for that. And also, just get going right now. And I think that's the crucial thing with what you said there, is it doesn't have to be perfect. Because I think that's what holds so many people back. Just sort of, well, I have what's in my mind, and what if what I create doesn't end up looking like what I have in my mind? But it's the only way to get that ball rolling is by starting.
And it won't. It's gonna, like, all the stuff you do is gonna kind of suck for a while. That's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone knows it. Person putting all that pressure on you the most is you. So thank you very much for that advice, Jake. Now, the chat doesn't actually end there. If you want to hear 15 or so minutes of bonus questions with Jake in a Rapidash round of quickfire questions, then you can hop over to the Patreon, thank you, where you can support the podcast and me as a creator, and hear a little bit more of all of the pearls of wisdom that Jake has to offer. Things like the improv scene that you're proudest of, or your best one-liner, and things like that. If you want to get involved, then do join on Patreon. But fundamentally, thanks so much for listening to this episode. I so appreciate you for tuning in. It means a huge amount. So, Jake Spragels, thank you so much for coming onto the show. You shared a lot with us. It's been a bumper episode. It's been a longer episode than normal, but that's just because you've had so many interesting things to say.
Sorry.
To dive into it. So, no, thank you so much.
I loved it. Thanks for having me.
Where can people find you online if they want to keep up with you?
You can check me out, Spragels, on most everything. YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, TikTok. I'm Jake is super cool. You know, I mean, we don't get them all. But yeah, Spragels on lots of stuff. You can find me playing games and casting Unite and saying words.
Absolutely. Make sure you go and check out Jake's content. As he was saying, it's phenomenally popular for good reason. So do make sure you go and check that out. And if you've enjoyed what you've heard, then it'd be great if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can turn on the notifications. So
like, comment, subscribe. Drops. Come on, do the things right now.
Do all of those things. I'd love to know what your dream team of 6 would be as well. Drop it in the comments. What do you think of what Jake had to say? There are so many things, hopefully so many conversations to be started from this. So would love to hear it all. And all of those things, all of the things that you hear creators say all the time, they really do go a long way, all the liking and creating. I mean, look at where Jake is now. That's all came from people clicking some buttons, fundamentally.
Very true.
So thank you so much for that. And any suggestions for guests that you have, any feedback you have on the show, chazingdra@gmail.com is the place to email, as well as follow me on the socials that I called out earlier. Also to submit guest questions or questions for the guests, Chazingdra or Chazingdra Chats. And you can join my Discord community too. There are so many ways to get in touch. All the links are going to be below, along with that Patreon. We've heard a lot from the Unite side of things. Next time we'll hear about the VG side of things. We've got episodes covering TCG and Go as well, seeing how all this community links up together to provide so much joy for us all. All right then, Jake, it's time for this Rapidash round. Okay. And if you're not joining us for that over on the Patreon, then it's goodbye from Jake.
Goodbye, but I know you'll be there.
See you there. And it's goodbye from me. I hope that Jake and I managed to brighten your day. We'll see you next time on Chazingdra Chats, where there'll be another 6 Pokemon, 1 life story. Okay, Jake, you ready for this?
I'm ready, baby.
Let's do it. Let's start with the ones that I...